I have an important message for a select few. That's not all of you. This is for a select few of you guys that are listening or watching this. It's for trade business owners that have been around for a while. They understand the frustrations of marketing and being in control or not being in control. Guys, it's 2021 and many of you are marketing yourselves like it's the year 2000. Off the back of a global pandemic, we've seen huge shifts in the market with people turning to service providers they know, like, and trust. There's never been a better time to establish the tools and frameworks in your business to take advantage of these things. These things that will serve you not only now, but serve the business ongoing. Over at Tradie Web Guys, we've recently launched the Elevation program. It equips businesses with the tools and the programs required to successfully market themselves. It gives you tools to re-engage with your past and present clients whilst nurturing potential clients. It creates assets in your company's name with no proprietary licenses. You own these things 100%. It gives your business a huge head start on the search engines with advanced SEO, and it collates all of the programs and all the services you need into one neat little bundle, including things like web development, website management, email marketing, SEO, Google Ads, loads of different softwares, strategy, support, and a bunch of other things. After going through this program, you'll have all the tools you need to market your business ongoing. You'll have a huge head start in your marketing, and you'll also have a CRM so you can continue to build your database whilst engaging your current customers and re-engaging those customers that you've essentially forgotten about. Marketing tools that you need, and they'll all be in your control. You don't owe anyone anything. You'll be able to dial it up and down essentially as you see fit. So why is this an important time to talk about this? Guys, it's important to know a lot about a little and a little about a lot. Meaning, you want to be in control. You want to know enough to be dangerous. I'm not trying to give you more work here. Essentially, we'll set everything up for you, teach you the basics, and then it's all yours. It's complete transparency. You'll never grow a business past a certain point without marketing. Word of mouth will only ever get you so far. We've spoken about it on the podcast a load of times. At some stage, you need to invest in these things. This is the simplest and most affordable way to do it. For more information, head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/elevation, fill in the form, and let's make 2021 the year that you took control. G'day guys, welcome to this awesome podcast. Today you're going to hear from one of our community members over at the SiteShed private Facebook group. He's been an active follower of the podcast pretty much since its inception, and he's a really, really great guy, and I'm sure you're going to learn a lot from this. The preface of this story is really to give you guys a bit of hope and a bit of, I suppose, foresight in the space of what is achievable in a very short period of time. I'm just going to give you guys a bit of a heads up as to some of the things we cover in this podcast because they are relevant to you and they are things that we can help you with over at Tradie Web Guys. Now, one of those things, obviously the website, which is a no-brainer. If you haven't got a website, you're behind the eight ball from the get-go. The second thing is we talk a lot about automation in this podcast, and automation in the space of how to reduce friction points and also how to improve some of the outcomes and the deliverables of your products and services and things like that. Now, we also touch on some of the programs we run, primarily Elevation program, which basically takes all of these amazing marketing digital assets, bundles them all into a little product package and just gives them all to you guys so you're equipping your business with everything that it ever needs from a marketing point of view. And you can find out all of this information over at tradiewebguys.com.au. For the automation stuff, head to /automation. For the Elevation program, head to /elevation. You can't go wrong. I hope to see you there. Chat soon. Bye. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au /apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the SiteShed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Peter Kendall, welcome to the SiteShed podcast.
Matt Jones, thanks for having me.
So what did you say offline? Long time listener.
First time caller.
First time caller.
That's it.
Mate, welcome to the show. It's been great having you part of the community over the years, and I know you've been a big supporter of the podcast, so thank you very much for all of that.
No worries. Always pestering everyone on Facebook and in the community, trying to put my 2 cents forward.
Yeah, no, and it's great. And I suppose one of the reasons that I wanted to have you on the show today is because there's just been a noticeable evolution of I suppose the business and yourself over the last year, especially.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of listeners and viewers out there that would certainly, if not like to relate to the journey that you've been on. And I know you've done it tough through times. And I think, as you said offline, you heard somewhere on one of the podcasts, my advice was you have to go through a bit of struggle in order to get to where you've got, and that certainly sounds like your story.
Yeah, pretty much. It's exactly what's happened. So we shall I wind the clock back a bit?
Yeah, do.
Okay, cool. So we've got a couple of businesses. I call them businesses. One of them's just the typical trade business. I call myself a recovering tradesman because I keep falling back into the same trap of doing all the work all the time, and no one can do it as well or as good or as fast. So we've got a couple of different operations. We've got a door installation business, and that's basically a truck and a phone number and an email address. And we get out and get a phone call, go out and assess the problem and then fix the problem with the doors. And it's not really, it was never really much of a business. So we decided to professionalise that business a little bit. Well, we thought we were going to, and that's what led me to you guys. So gave you a call October last year and suggested that, I didn't know anything at the time about marketing or sales or SEO or any of this stuff, and thought maybe we need a really cool website and we'll get heaps of leads in, and, that'd be great, and we'll have heaps of work. And then, subsequently had a phone call with you. And I think I came away from that a bit sheepish, realising that I don't actually know anything about anything. And pretty much the last thing I needed was a whole bunch of leads that we wouldn't be able to handle. So I think your advice at the time was go and get your head straight and have a think about how you're going to deal with all this. Do some struggle. I think you pretty much told me, not in no uncertain terms, but go away, struggle, have a think about what you want to do and how you're going to handle all this stuff, and then we'll have a chat a bit further down the track, which is sort of where we're heading at the moment. Yeah, so I suppose
the premise of that conversation, and it's one that we have quite a bit, and I think business owners, they think that the answer to all of their problems is more work and more leads, when the reality is that the crux of their problem is often more work and more leads. And that being, there's a lot of foundational things that need to be established before you can essentially turn that tap on. Otherwise, you get a bit of situation, like you just said, where you've got a lot of work you can't deliver on, and that has a profound negative effect on the business, both initially and ongoing, sometimes to the point where you can't recover from it.
That's it.
I definitely advise people to take it slow in the early stages to get, work on some of those processes and work on some of those foundational things, which is certainly what it seems like you've been doing. So where has it led you from there?
Okay, so I already had a builder's license in Melbourne. I picked that up. I had a almost career-ending back injury a few years ago, and that gave me some time to go away and study and upskill and get my builder's license. And we were limited by our insurance cap, so we could never really take on too much work. And then there's nothing like having a baby to sharpen your focus. So we had a baby recently, and that sort of
congratulations.
Thank you. That led me into deciding that maybe the door business isn't going to be such a good thing, but we have kept it open, and we'll get into some building work. So Get the door open. That's exactly right. If they open and shut, they do both things. So we have started up the building business, and we've got all the mistakes from our past business to use as a reference point for what not to do in the new business. So we're treating this new business like a startup. So we're building it with the infrastructure in place to grow it without any of the problems that we're going to have problems. There's always problems with new business. But we've built the back end to handle leads and have that inflow of, that constant funnel open to drip leads in. And obviously the gestation period on new building work or, major renovation extension stuff is quite long. So initially we've geared our website towards bathroom renovations, so smaller stuff. But because of our marketing method that we'll get into in a second, people come to us and kind of ignore the fact that our website is representative of the bathroom side, and we sort of get into more whole of house sort of renovations, extensions, additions, renovations kind of work.
For better or worse?
For better. I mean, that's what we want to do. But obviously the insurance cap when we built our initial website was the issue. So we went for the smaller value jobs because we could fund it. And now we're in a position where we've upped that insurance. So, our cap's lifted and we can take on much bigger projects. So the website will be an evolution and work in, but we've just got to get some of these initial projects out of the road, get some content, and then we can obviously start marketing a bit more professionally and update the website to represent what it is we actually enjoy doing, what we love doing. Yeah. Not that we don't love doing bathroom renovations, but it's obviously as a salesperson, as a business owner, high value sales is an easier way to work through, which is why most builders end up in new work, I suppose. So getting into the marketing side, I suppose, a little bit, we've got an interesting approach here. So what I've done is set ourselves up in some of the local community groups in the suburbs that we target.
On Facebook. And sort of ingratiated myself in there, a lot of free information, answering people's building questions and things like that. And it's led into, a couple of inquiries a week for building work, which is quite a lot really, considering that they're pretty qualified. We've got a lot of referrals in those groups as well from people that we've done prior work for and everything. And it's quite a well-established group around our area. We are in one of the more affluent sort of areas. So we tend to find that the people in those groups, we're not competing too much on price or anything straight away. Mm-hmm. And we're gaining that referral traction from, the group. So we're sort of elevating ourselves through the sales process quite early on. So it's been good. So that's our lead gen at the moment, because obviously we've got a limited capacity still for what we can take on and how much work we can do. And we don't ever want to be at it. It's great to grow your capacity, but that's a problem for business in the future as well. That's great. And so, it's interesting. And I think for a lot of the listeners out there that are in that project space, builders and, the likes, it's not often a conversation around we need loads of leads. It's a little different when you're maybe a maintenance plumber or electrician that does 5-6 jobs a day. Like, you guys aren't necessarily. It's very different from a marketing point of view. You don't need that many leads. You just need a handful of qualified ones.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so it does change the game a little bit from that churn and burn mentality to, okay, let's play the long game here and let's get really proactive with nurturing and education and, being like you are, being present in places where people are coming for information and coming for reference. And you'll probably find that it'll, like looking forward, and you touched on it before, once you've got a few of those projects under your belt and you've got a reference, you've got projects that you can steer people towards, completed projects that you can steer people towards, you'll find that, there's a little ecosystem that comes into play there, and you may never have to, go down the traditional marketing methods of running Google ads and, doing all this stuff. You've kind of got it dialed in at that level. And that's essentially what you want. You want like more qualified leads, which I want to get to in a minute as well. Conversation around how you can take people from a community group, like Facebook, like you said, and then really make sure that they are a right fit. I'm curious as to what that conversation looks like and what the process is around, qualifying or disqualifying those people.
Okay. And so to answer that question, I suppose what we do is we usually take the inquiry. So some of those people, they will reach out on Messenger, which isn't ideal.
Well, it's not. I would argue that, to be honest, because I think like one of the beautiful things about marketing is there's no real right or wrong.
Yeah.
And when it comes to making yourself available to your customers, it's making yourself available to them where they are. If you're engaged in a community group and people can engage with you through Messenger chat, then I'd say that's probably the perfect contact.
And obviously when I set that up, I realised, forecast that would probably be the method by which they would arrive in our inbox.
Right.
And so we've got a combination. We've got some through Messenger, and then I'll direct them to the website, answer any of their questions through Messenger, and then I'll always try and direct them to the website to fill out the form to get them into our process, because that's going to extract all the information we need from them.
Question.
And start down our process.
When they come to you via Messenger, mm-hmm. Are you putting them through any sort of automation, like a ManyChat bot system, or is it just you chatting to them?
we're just chatting to them. So at the moment, we don't have, because of the scale of the work and the costs involved, we don't have enough that we need to automate that process.
Sure.
But 100% that's something we're going to have to do as soon as we switch on the tap. So yeah, obviously when we hand this off probably to you guys, that'll be something that we'll definitely have to do.
It's interesting. We've just recently put a huge, or for the listeners of yours that don't know, I run a digital agency for tradies called Tradie Web Guys, and we've recently really been developing website bots. And there's some really cool things you can do there in the space of taking a customer from, say, a Facebook Messenger inquiry through essentially like a pattern of communications, which are helping them get the answer they're looking for, which doesn't involve you. I suppose jury's out whether it's better to be the one physically answering those messages as a human. But I mean, you don't allude at any point that they're not talking to a bot, but it's really designed to help them get answers they're looking for, and second of all, free you up from having to sit there on your Facebook chat the whole day, like answering, queries to people that aren't potentially qualified. The cool thing is you can kind of steer them in those directions. So if you wanted to get them at some point of that conversation, like you said, to go fill a form in on the website, then the bot can kind of guide them towards that. And it's really quite clever. It's an evolution. It's always a work in progress, but it's kind of fun to work with.
Yeah, I can imagine. The internet is never finished.
That's right.
Always something new. It's like always something new.
Like a builder's house.
Yeah. Don't say that. Well, it's completely done. It's completely done.
Yeah. So I think, it's really interesting, this conversation around Facebook community groups. Some people get a lot of success out of them. Some people don't. And some people come to us and, they'll say, oh, we want to, we're doing Facebook marketing. And I'll say, what are you doing? And they'll say a similar thing to you. We're in a lot of Facebook community groups. And I always counter that and say, from a marketing point of view, that's not actually Facebook marketing. It's kind of like a modern day word of mouth. So where back in the day, people might go to the coffee shop and stick a business card up on a notice board or something like that. Facebook community groups have kind of replaced that today. And so Facebook marketing is really when you're like spending money on outreach and ads, and you're building funnels and this kind of stuff, like top of funnel conversations and all this kind of thing, which to be honest is useful, but it's not really what we're talking about today. Like this whole approach with community groups is really more about being present in areas and locations that you want to operate in, and then being available to have conversations with people when people ask questions about, oh, who can you recommend for a plumber, builder, electrician, blah, blah, whatever. So you kind of need to build a little fan club, I suppose.
You need a cheer squad.
And that's sort of where I'm going with this. How have you built a little fan club so people do refer you?
Well, we've got all our work that we've done in the past for people around the community. So, I've been here my whole life, so we know plenty of people, built plenty of houses for family and friends and things like that, and done heaps of renovation work. So we've got a bit of a history in the area, and lots of those people are in this group. So they'll give us the plug on any particular post or any information that we're answering, and things kind of feed in that way, which is nice. And it's similar to your own Facebook group, I suppose, in that people are offering advice and information freely and readily all the time. And so it's kind of in the same vein. We're doing the same thing. It doesn't take up much of my day. It's fun to see what's happening in the community and find out what people's problems are, because it's also a database. It's a mine. It's a gold mine for the problems that are out there that we can solve. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm harvesting that information, and we're trying to build automations and processes that answer those people's questions for our own purposes in our own marketing, and via the once they get involved with us, we already know pretty much what people are going to ask us, because we've been monitoring it through email conversations, through the Facebook community groups, and we've been doing it for years. So all we've done is taken that information and written it down, and then written answers to those questions and made it part of our process.
And so I just want to go back to something you were talking about a little before, where you were saying, you've built this new division of your business, or essentially it's an entirely new business. You've gone from We Hang Doors to Expanse Builders, and you said a little earlier that you set Expanse Builders up in a way that tackled some of the mistakes, or navigated some of the mistakes that you initially had when you had your door hanging business. What were some of those mistakes?
Okay, so in terms of that business, so we didn't like all trades businesses. You finish your apprenticeship and you come out of it. And I was lucky enough to do 10 years in architectural high-end homes, site supervision and carpentry for bespoke residential. Sort of anything up to $7 million. So that was a great time. And then we were doing the contract carpentry work for those jobs up until even recent times, to be honest. And the door business was a stopgap between larger contracts. So it was never started as with the intent of turning it into a productive full-time business that would grow. And so, like all tradesmen, or many tradesmen, that is, I was just answering the phone, getting the work done, and that was it. There was no marketing. There's no systems. There was no infrastructure. Everything's on an Excel spreadsheet. Times and dates are in a book, and you're on site putting stuff in, and people are ringing you, and it's just an absolute schmozzle. It's a debacle, right? And it just enough's enough. So we've been able to utilise the problems from that business to really guide the new business in terms of process. So we've got a CRM, and we're plugging jobs in, and taking people through we don't lose track of any of the information. We've got a system for storing all of the client data, and everything's there, and everything talks to each other. So it's really well run. But the door business has been invaluable in that process because we've been able to roll some of that stuff out into the door business to test it. And because the volume of building work versus door work, you've got hundreds of leads all the time, and with building, there's only a couple at a time. Right. So if we were to have refined these systems using only the building process, we'd be 5 years down the track only finding this stuff out now. Yeah. But we've been able to utilise that high lead volume and implement heaps of changes on the fly, getting in front of lots and lots and lots of people to build this new system. So it's been great.
So what did that evolution look like, and how did you, I suppose, go about remedying or finding a way to fill those gaps? Did you dive headfirst into technology, or did you draw out in some way, the customer journey and where the bottlenecks were, and then find solutions to fit that? Like, how did that look?
So it's probably a combination of two or three things all at once. So as you were just saying, I mapped out, on the back of a tissue box or a napkin or whatever it was that was in front of me at the time, how we want this thing to look, the process between getting a phone call or a lead and getting that customer signed up. And so, we've read a few books and listened to a few podcasts and constantly trying to learn, map that process out quite roughly, and then had to set about finding some technology to help us along the way. And so we did the technology churn that you go through. You and I use a couple of the same systems, as it turns out, and, pretty happy with some of those. It's pretty good. But I think the first starting point really was Xero that opened my eyes. I went from MYOB 19.5 to Xero because someone said do that. And the lights went on. I didn't even know, I didn't know anything. So Xero, all of a sudden you can send a quote and you can see someone's opened the quote. Oh my God, they just opened the quote. And then they can accept it online. That's crazy, Yeah. And I'm thinking this is the best thing ever. I'm an automation god. And that was the start. And I went, okay, there must be heaps of other stuff that we can do here that can take some of the work off the plate. And then it just rolls into the next thing, and the next thing goes to the next thing. And all of a sudden you're seeing when people open proposals and emails, and it's insane what you can do, just with a little bit of thought and put into that process, and then it helps you guide people through those things. You can see the patterns of which times they're opening emails, and you can have an estimate on what their hours might be at work or their family, and you really can isolate what very accurately people's general availabilities, and then work that into delivering your message to them.
Yeah, it's, and I think that's an important, the key there, I think, for you guys watching and listening is just to have an understanding of what that workflow looks like initially before you go headfirst into tools and tech, which I admittedly have done, and to be honest, I probably still do incorrect. Yeah, I'm mad for it. I see something pop up in AppSumo and I'm all over it, and then I'm like, why did I buy that? But I think you can over automate, and you can have too much tech in the business. And it's something I'm learning now is just, the last couple of years we've really been cutting a lot of tech back, and we're pretty proactive now with finding tools that can either solve a problem or replace a existing piece of software that does it a little bit better, you know. And so it's a pretty good little like tool ecosystem that we've got running. That said, I look at my my balance sheet and profit and loss statements for apps and tools and technology, for last year, and I'm just like, I spent what? Holy shit! So. But then that said, you sort of got to look at that and I think this is a thing that a lot of people, especially new businesses, and this could have potentially been you if you hadn't have run the door hanging business. People look at things like Xero and they go, oh, just starting up. I don't really have the money I don't want to spend the money on a software like Xero, not understanding how much money it can save you and how much it can actually generate you through having a streamlined process to alleviate so many problems.
Yeah, but that aside, instead of just the cost of the monthly fee on that sort of thing, the access that it gives your bookkeeper and accountant to your back end. So it saves time on the phone, sending emails, answering questions about receipts, all that's gone. So all of a sudden, you're saving hours a month just in answering a spreadsheet about, or you're trying to work out how you used to do receipts. It's all there. Everything's just in front of everyone. So it saves more than just the $50 a month or, whatever it is to pay for Xero.
Literally thousands and thousands of dollars a year in bookkeeping it saves. Literally.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. Like I haven't even thought about the savings until just then, but it's probably, but in just terms of my time, it's life-changing. It's just like, that's just part one of technology.
We spoke about this on a podcast I recorded on Tuesday, actually, and like I was saying, basically the alternative, if you take yourself back in time, only not so long ago, even 15, 20 years ago, before cloud bookkeeping software was sort of a thing. I mean, MYOB was a thing, but it was never cloud-based, and MYOB was leading the charge back then. Whereas I think over in the US they were still using QuickBooks or whatever it might have been, but the point being, like those back then, it kind of meant you had to have somebody in an office, which you didn't necessarily need, with perhaps another couple of staff sitting there managing things like accounts receivable and accounts payable and reconciling transactions and all this kind of like manual stuff. Whereas now you've essentially got one piece of software that costs you $50 or maybe $70 if you've got payroll, and it's all like I think my reconciling takes me an hour a week, I don't even have to do that. My bookkeeper could do it, but I like doing it because I like keeping a finger on the pulse with it. So it's amazing the amount of time and effort, and more importantly, how much a simple tool like that can really streamline your operations and just make things run more efficiently.
Yeah, if you don't have it, get on it.
And then, like you said, that's one of a number of tools available that can really help in different areas of your business. But I think the point of this whole conversation really was, understanding, first of all, what that workflow looks like. So what you did, how you drew out that customer journey or that sales process, and then understanding where, at which part of that process is there an issue, and how can I rectify that? Is it through a tool or a technology? Is it through a standard operating procedure? Is it through hiring somebody, or whatever that might look like? There's a really, if you guys want more information on that, go and check out Dave Jennings' book called Systemology, a recent book. I don't know if you had a chance to read that one, Pete, but he's got essentially it's like understanding that workflow and then processing out those bottleneck parts. You don't have to process out every stage of the workflow. It's just processing out the essential parts of that workflow. And with the mindset of, you don't need to over systemize the business, but you do certainly had to have systems in place at certain points in various workflows. So I encourage you guys to go check that out. I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, it's on my to listen list. It's I downloaded it on Audible. It'll be next up, I reckon.
Yeah, it's a good book.
Yeah, so I guess that leads us sort of through to where we're at now, I guess. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, let's go. Let's hit me with it.
So what we've done is we've built out our process now. So I'm lucky enough that I've got a hobby in 3D design. So I think, I ran you through one of these the other day to have a bit of a look-see for me, because I accidentally sent it to the client before I'd finished the edit. But I'm lucky enough
And out of curiosity, what was the feedback on that when you sent it to them?
for the client. So they love it. They're absolutely blown away.
And this is kind of the point I was trying to make in that message. Like sometimes as business owners, we over analyze things, and like you sent me this video to proof it for you before you sent it to the client, which you'd accidentally already sent to them. And I looked at it and I was like, this is amazing. There is literally 0.5% of your competitors will be doing this. And essentially what it was, guys, was just Pete doing a video recording similar to what you're watching right now, like a Loom video, if you will, or whatever, screen capture. And he just went through a 3D design and he was talking to the client about different options for the delivery of this project. And it was awesome. And he messaged me going, I don't really like it. I feel like I've missed all this stuff. And I was like, mate, just ready, fire, aim. And I think that's really important. Like until you get real market feedback on not just things like that, but everything, you're never really going to have a valuable, viable source of information, of useful, relevant feedback that you can actually use to steer the direction of a product, a service, a system, a process, whatever it might be. And this is a prime example. I would just say to people, just get something out there and then get feedback on it so you can improve it.
So that would lead me on from there. It's pretty cool to be able to do this stuff. And if you told me a year ago that I would be doing 3D design work and getting paid for it, I would have laughed at you. I was putting doors in left, right, and centre, going I put doors on for a living, mate. Like I'm not doing 3D design work, but I'd always done the 3D design work for part of our really high-end custom doors. So checking clearances on secret doors and bookshelf doors and stuff like that. Even this thing behind me is a door.
Wait.
So that's just, part of the house. It's all smoke and mirrors, mate. If I took a photo looking back the other way, I'd be set up to get that in the background. But that's the thing. It's about the polish for the client, right? So if you're going to have your client on a Zoom meeting, you want to have a nice background and you want everything to look good. Otherwise, the next guy will. And you've just got to beat the next guy.
A total segue. You would probably know this, being that you're in Melbourne. There's this great bar in Melbourne somewhere, and I went to it at one of my mate Dave's workshops actually after one of his presentations. But you walk into this foyer, and then there's a restaurant on the top floor, and then you go to like this bookshelf and you pull a book like out of a movie, and this door opens and it leads down to this amazing bar underground. It's the coolest thing. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, but it sounds like something similar to what you're talking about. Like that's the kind of thing you want to have a 3D design of.
It's funny that you say that because I can actually name one in Sydney.
Oh,
I
true.
can't tell you which one it is in Melbourne. Yeah, the barbershop.
There you go.
There you go. Shout out to the barbershop. Anyway, so what I've done is I've taken that 3D walkthrough video and I'm just doing a voice over the top and package it up for the client. And we sold that as part of the design process. So part of our package deal is they get that design sent to them. But that was an evolution. So that started off as doing the 3D designs and then packaging different shots as PDFs and sending it to the client. And then we've decided that, hey, we can just do a video of this, talk them through it and send it to them. And the difference is just amazing to their reaction. So when they get the PDFs, it's like, oh yeah, just another bunch of pictures kind of thing. And when they're doing video fly-throughs of their job, the response is insane. It's just been incredible. So we sell that package to them. That's theirs to keep. They can have anyone build that, but they're not going anywhere else, I don't think, after that happens.
Yeah.
So we've taken that now, send a bunch of emails once they're engaged with us, and we try and extract as much information as we can about what it is they want.
This is pre-sale. This is
pre-sale.
Early conversations.
Yeah, early conversations. Okay. So they fill out the form on the website. We obtain a bunch of information about them.
Like
and
what?
Then just all the basics. So get all the basics down: name, address, telephone number, outline of what you want done, budget guide. The website is bathroom centric. The pricing's bathroom centric. So they've got some selections to make there. And then if they've seen anything they like on Houzz, Pinterest, Instagram, just tick the box, none of the above. And that's pretty much it. Then a bit of a description area. So they send us that.
Do you go into thing like DA? Do they have drawings? Do they have engineers? Any of that sort of stuff?
Because it's coming through the bathroom site,
right.
So we haven't got to that point yet. But a lot of the clients we get from the Facebook group, they're in that area, so they come through if they fill the form out at all, which a lot of them don't. But we go around the back and we put them into a list and then start sending them emails that are more building centric.
Right.
And so we obtain the information that way, but through email response.
Automation?
Yeah, so it's so all the emails are pre-cooked, like, they're all ready to go, and we're sending them out through an email marketing platform.
Yep.
So they're all packaged up professionally and everything.
Yep.
But all of the core material, but we do tweak the email, the message, but based on the person. So it's manual. But like I said, it's not like the doors where it's just churn. Mm-hmm. We're just really trying to hit these people on their pain points and make sure that message is 100% tailored to them, but packaged up in a professional way. It's not coming from a regular email account. It just is a few lines on a bit of paper. They've got video embeds and all that sort of thing that looks really cool for them.
I can tell you've been listening, because that's like for stuff that you do with the project-based work, and understanding that sales cycle is at times considerably longer than the likes of some of our friends and colleagues that are emergency service related or lawn care, whatever it might be.
Yep.
So having a really good communication pattern in place, which can add value from the point where they become a contact to the point where they potentially, hopefully, become a client, like that can really be the difference between you being the one they choose to go ahead with, and that communication typically is education based. It's not you trying to ram your proposal down their throat or trying to sell them shit.
On that, everything we do is to add value to that client. So we want that client to get exactly what they want, and often extracting what they want from them is the hardest part. It's really painful. Sure. So it's we want to do a 2-story extension, and you go, that's great. Is there anything we need to know about upstairs? No, nothing at all. And then 2 weeks into the discussion, they want a grand piano upstairs, and it's like, okay, that's a whole bunch of engineering we need to look at, to take those loads and things. So just getting the full picture, the full story of what people are actually going to do with their property is the hardest part. Often it's a long process.
And this is one thing that I would say, like that's a really good and useful like FAQ, I suppose, if you want, for you, because as part of that communication pattern, and for you guys out there that are listening and watching, if that's something that does happen regularly, if you're having conversations with people and then down the track they want to change something which might have an effect on bearing capacity and something really significant in the building process, then these are things that if you brought up early in the conversation, or you addressed in a case study even, which was sent to them in an email before they actually got their proposal sent out to them, this is something that you would alleviate. And so, I mean, I know a lot of our building clients have similar, perhaps not that specific example, but certainly in, some of our clients which we help, like in the qualification process, if somebody comes to them, they say, we want to do a renovation on our home. Okay, great. Go and fill in this form. And on that form, you're not so much asking them, I mean, you are asking them for information, sure, but what you're also doing throughout this process is you're prompting them with things that they haven't yet considered. And we do it ourselves. A prime example is people come to us and they'll go, oh, we need a new website. I'm like, why is that? As an example, why is that? Oh, well, because we need more work. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. But having a new website doesn't mean you're going to get more work. Having a new website means you've got a foundation to drive traffic to. So what you're really talking about here is marketing. So these are things that like they might, and it's relevant in all different verticals. People come to you with what they think is the problem, but it's really not the problem. They're coming to you with a keyword that they might be familiar with. Oh, I want SEO. Why is that? Oh, I need work tomorrow. Okay, you need Google Ads. Like, they don't really understand. So it's your job to kind of break that down. And so in that sort of instance, when, you've got somebody or maybe a handful of customers, and I'd say if it happens more than twice, you've got a great reason to create content on that, whatever that might look like. It could be a video, it could be a blog post, it could be both, but making sure that people understand those problems and the potential problems of what looking forward. If they don't remedy that in the instance, it could potentially eliminate that whole that obstacle before it becomes an obstacle, which is the goal.
Yeah, 100%. So the more information you can get out of whatever business you're in, the more information that you can get out of your client. Like if you're doing a hot water service, burst hot water service, like they're going to ring the guy who's available to come and fix the problem, right? So unless you're a plumber, of course, and then you're going to call me and tell me that that's not exactly what happens, and you have to waste a lot of time talking to people who don't want to use it. They just want a price. But it depends what your business is. But irrespective of that, the information that you can extract out of people early in the process, it's going to benefit them as much as it's going to benefit you, because you're going to have a better result. They're going to be a happier customer, and you're going to have the job's going to be better. Everyone's going to be happier. So why wouldn't you do that? And for yourself, talking to you, I just think back to over a year the first time around, and the look on your face and just going, God, here's another one. Like, I just had no idea what I was talking about. And I'm like, yep, just the conversation would have been horrific for you at your end.
It's not, and it's common, to be honest with you, because people don't. I mean, you don't know what you don't know what you don't know. I say it all the time, and like those things are not obvious. The obvious thing is, what all your competitors talk about or what your mates at the pub talk about, which is, getting more work. But what they don't talk about is, how they build out processes to better optimize the leads they're getting, and like conversations that are actually relevant. And when you look at, when you get to the point in business where you're starting to measure deliverables, very few of those deliverables are focused on like the actual number. Like the end goal might be the number. Like it might be, we want to do 2 million in revenue, or we want to do this and that. But then when you break that down into bite-sized chunks, it's never about this week I want to do 50 grand. It's more about this week we need to process and have at least 15 people apply, because that means with our conversion rate of 50%, we're going to get 7 of them come through as customers, which means that then will add up to the 50K or whatever it is. So you kind of got to have a bit more perspective on what those real metrics are. But those conversations like I had with you, like that's common play, because people don't really understand what that looks like. So between then and now, and if you had have gone to like a Google ad specialist or an SEO specialist back in the day, they would have said, yeah, sure, let's go, let's do this, we'll get these leads coming for you, and it would have probably tanked the business.
It actually came about because I was following another business on Facebook, and they were offering a service that I needed, and I could see the back end hadn't been fleshed out. So I called this business, and I sent a message or whatever it was, the form or whatever it was, and then they called me at 9:30 at night or something, the guy, and I just thought to myself, man, he hasn't got a system in place to deal with this influx of leads that he's been flicked by a marketing company, and he hasn't understood the process. I think he's rectified the issue now, and he's learned the school of hard knocks, as we all do, that you need something in place to answer those early questions. But more interesting than that is the follow-ups, because if you were to look at the amount of quotes that any trade, electrician, plumber, carpenter, deck pergolas, whatever it is, the amount of quotes that you're sending in any week, how many of those are you following up? And just even having an email automation process just to follow those up, and just 2 days later touch base or say, hey, I know life's hectic, can we get in touch? Have you done something about that job yet, or whatever it is? Because even that, you get so many people that just say, oh, I was busy, like I just hadn't had time to think about it. But yeah, we still want to go ahead with that. You go, okay, cool. There's another job I don't need to go find.
Like it's the easiest thing. I mean, so we resell a product which essentially out of the box we can deploy to our clients what we call our anti-follow-up automation. And essentially it does what you just said. So when you send a proposal, it puts that person into a sequence of communications, which keeps you in contact with them over however long you want. But I think we drip it out over every 2 days. They get a different email communication, and at the end of it, that the last communication in that sequence is sending the actual business owner a message saying, hey, they've been through this sequence. Give them a call. Go see what's happening with their quote. Because at no point throughout that communication have we touched on the quote itself. We've just been giving them useful information to remind them that we're there, And it's funny, we do it ourselves. We send a proposal out, we put them in this automation, and then all of a sudden people reply and they're like, hey, thanks for that email. That was really useful. I hadn't actually thought of that. And I'm like, what the hell are they talking about? And then I realize they're actually part of an automation.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so it's those kind of tools that I've stumbled across and, had to build out by myself, probably very amateur, but they're serving their purpose for the time being. And once the business is at a level where we've got enough, budget to put in a full-scale marketing effort, then we can hand that off, because it's not what I want to do. I don't want to be a marketing guy. I want to go put nails in. I want to talk to clients, and I want to draw stuff in 3D. Like that's my superpower. That's what I love doing.
I suppose though, like the reality there is, like with that infrastructure in place, you may never need that person. You may never need to have that person do that, or you can have somebody like an office administration person do it for you. You don't necessarily need an agency, inverted commas, to do that, because essentially it's, especially for a business like yours that doesn't need a high volume of leads, it just needs a handful of good ones, and
Yeah,
that's kind of a metaphor for business, I think, really. Like, I think that's the golden goose right there.
yeah,
But
exactly.
no, I was just going to say, like, putting the work into developing those processes similar to what you've done. Sure, it might mean that in the early stages you're not getting the turnover that you want to maybe live your lifestyle or whatever it is, but it certainly sets the business up for future success. And I think that's the big thing, and it's one of the reasons why we launched our Elevation program, is to equip businesses with all of the essential tools that they're going to need, if not immediately, certainly looking forward. Things like an email marketing CRM and a website that enables them to qualify their customers, and website bots, and just stuff that will serve the business ongoing. Well beyond the program, and well beyond even their relationship with us if they want. So those sort of things, I think, are important for people to consider and appreciate. The sooner they do, the better.
Well, I think, to be honest, it's as important as having a mobile phone these days. It's that simple. If you don't want to do it yourself, engage someone to do it for you, because you probably don't have time or the understanding of how to do it anyway. But it's not necessarily the most complicated thing in the world, but it is massively time consuming. And COVID gave me that time to put the effort in to have a go at it. But it's been quite a rewarding process for me, in that we now are having people come through and they're selling themselves on a project. They're giving us all the information. They're sending us photos of things they like the look of and all this information. We just take it, we roll that information back out, hit on every point that they've made, send it to them, and package price some specifics. So we have some variations for, contaminated asbestos and things like that. And then they can pull the trigger and move forwards. And then it just happens.
Easy.
I mean, I'm asleep and you wake up and there's someone in there.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I suppose, that's like, it's such like, and like those sort of things, the design of those sort of flows and frameworks take time. But then once you're actually in, like once you've actually done the heavy lifting, it just saves so much time. It's amazing. And like you said, because you're using things like automation, which is essentially largely removing human error, things like, oh, I forgot, or things like, oh, I left that out, or, oh, why didn't I put that in that email? Because you've kind of already pre-designed it and you've thought that through. Essentially what you're doing is improving your conversions, because you're ticking all the boxes, and you're not leaving it up to yourself to remember things, on the spot. You've got all of those things already set up and deployed into a automation or whatever that can do that for you. So your conversions affected positively, significantly.
Yeah. And it's not just with the, sales, marketing, proposals, quotes. It happens in every stage of the business. So we've thought about this business ground up. So we went, well, how do you build a house? Let's have a think about the slab. So let's checklist as many items as we can. And we've created a whole bunch of checklists, which obviously will get refined over time. Mm-hmm. And when you create a purchase order for a tradesperson, they get a checklist for that job with that purchase order. And so when they get the last item on the checklist is send invoice, like as soon as that work is complete and that's all ticked off, we just have to make sure that it's actually been done and ticked off, and you get paid. Like, it's simple. But how do they know what we need done if we're not going to put the effort in to tell them?
Exactly right.
They don't know. So we've done it with every stage of the business, and it's obviously a huge amount of work. But if you just sit down and do whatever task is in front of you today, write down how you're doing it, that becomes a much easier part of the process. You do one of those a day, every day, and over a week you've got 5 to 10 different, things that you've kind of got a framework for a process.
Exactly, and the beauty of doing stuff that way is, first of all, you're creating a culture within the business where people know and they understand your expectations. This is how we deliver this project. Follow the checklist. And as we've said in the show before, like essentially what you're talking about is project management, and it's basically checklists that instruct people on how to do it. And to take that a little step further, those various steps in that checklist if relevant, not all of them certainly, but a handful of them, they may require a standard operating procedure which explain how to do that step. You won't need it for all of them, but some of them, some of the bigger ones. So when you've given somebody that checklist, you're creating a culture where people know to deliver your project the way that you want it done. And they're accountable to it. They're checking things off. And if you're using technology, they are accountable to it, and you can see that they've checked it off. And they can't, if you can. I mean, I do it with my guys all the time. Hey, you check this off. You said it's done. I've just jumped in. It's not. Why'd you do that? Oh, so. And we've got like loads and loads of these different checklists for all different parts of the business. And it's amazing how much consistent the delivery of the product is over and over again. Like every time, it's just done the way we want it done in the company, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, that sounds like that's it. That's the dream, isn't it? Like the dream is to create a business in which all of the consistency is just there job after job, irrespective of the work you're doing.
The good thing about it as well is, and I encourage people not to look at it, like you said, it takes time to do that. It takes time to process this out. And what takes even more time is when you've got to create a procedure on a step in the process. Don't get me wrong. It's not like, whereas that task might take you to go and do that 10 minutes to process it out, it might take you an hour. But then if you haven't got to do it again, and if you haven't got people calling you every 5 minutes on the job going, hey, how do I do this again? And you've got to have the same conversations over and over and over again on exactly the same thing with different people, or perhaps even the same people, having that procedure in place is just going to free you up. And it's probably the only way it'll free you up.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it comes back into the business talk, making a sale, I guess. If you can process out the procedures by which you're talking to your clients and the conversations that you're going to have and the way that you get the information out of them to solve their problem, if you can turn that into a step-by-step guide, then that is going to provide consistency across those clients. So John has the same experience as Bob. They talk to each other and they go, oh, that was cool how that happened. You don't want them to go, oh, well, he was late and, there's no consistency anywhere. It's got to be consistent across the board. And that's from the day one. So from that very first contact point with your business all the way through to making that sale, we want everything to feel like it's processed out. Yeah. And it's very difficult with custom home builds, but, we'll get there.
Yeah. I think as well, it's important to appreciate that that whole process in itself, so the whole workflow to begin with, and then the lists that live within those workflows, and then the procedures that show people how to carry out specific stages of that list or whatever it is, or that task. They're always an evolution as well. And when you get to the point where you've got team members that are doing those things consistently, chances are they're going to eventually find a better way to do something. And we see this now as well, and it's great. Like the guys will come back and they go, hey, we've just updated the SOP because we found a better way of doing this. And that's music to a director's ears. Yeah. First of all, I would have no idea. I don't do it. When they come back, and I set it up initially with them, and over time they refine it and improve it, which is kind of the whole point, and if you empower your team members, and if you empower the people that are working with you, perhaps not, like contractors, but certainly, team members that are out there doing the same thing, of course they're going to find better ways to do things. And you want to empower them to do that, because it means that it's always going to be getting better without you.
Absolutely. That's the key, isn't it? So, the first hire for a lot of small business people is often their partner. And day one that they sit in the office, they're going to ask you, what do I do? So how are you going to tell them if you haven't worked it out? And then it's just going to make that transition frictionless. So it doesn't matter who your employees are, whether they're family or friends, they need someone to tell them, or some system in place to educate them on what their role is, and then how to achieve those tasks. And then, even better, and it empowers them to do it better.
So when you, just to give the listeners and the viewers a bit of perspective, when you started this process with the building business, where did you start? Like, what were some of the early things that you realized, this is what I definitely need to document, and this is what I definitely need to create some lists on?
It starts right at the bottom. So we had to do a roadmap of that client experience, and then every time you step on site, you have to think about presentation. So that needs to be documented and processed. And then you have to think about how anyone on site is going to talk every part of it,
Mm-hmm.
and then building the building. I mean, everyone in construction knows how to build a building, and everyone pretty much does a good job. They just need to be told what they have to do. And so it came down to the issues that I've had previously working for other builders and with the door business. And it's around the expectations. So processing out, when you receive a purchase order, it's often just a cut and paste of your quote, and you receive it back and it's got the price on it, you sign it, and that enrolls you in their system, right? But it's not giving you any further information about how that job's to be done, or, any expectations about fit and finish or anything like that. And that's how a lot of builders just roll, and it's just not good enough. So we've processed out that purchase order and checklisting off each trade's particulars for each job, so that we know tap heights and offsets and, who's checking the orders are correct and what's in the box, and why is there a gold tower rail on a house that's got black, taps? How did that happen? So we've put in place steps to get everything in the right place at the right time for the cost that it's supposed to cost, and so everything's a process. That's where it started, but it started with the client experience. So working out how we're going to deliver to these clients, and then working out how we're going to get our tradespeople to do the work to the standard that's required.
I've just remembered what Dave calls it. It's his critical client flow, and basically it's mapping out that step. So you know what? I've actually done one. I think for a building company, I actually mapped, or maybe it's a plumbing company. I can't remember. I'll put it in the show notes. There you go, folks. If you want to have a look at what that looks like, go. Well, first of all, go and get the book. But second of all, go and I'll put a link to the book in the show notes as well, so you can get it from Amazon. But I'll put a visual graph of that critical client flow, so you can kind of see what he talks about there. So Pete, I suppose getting close to closing this conversation off, I feel like we could talk all day.
Yeah, we could talk all day.
Let me ask you this. Off the back of, in Australia, sorry for you folks that aren't local, but we're sort of off the back of a global pandemic, the COVID thing here now. What have you learned throughout that process, and what's been valuable, I suppose, from a business point of view that you've been able to implement through COVID?
Okay, so for starters, it freed up time because we were locked out of all our sites. We had no access to anything that had a client living in it. Airbnbs are shut down, so they can't move out, so we couldn't get in. So we had plenty of time to sit down and really refine the process. So trawling through email, picking out all of the key pain points from most of the clients that we've dealt with in the past and everything that was on my desk at the time, and writing out how we're going to get the information from the client. Because for us, that's our biggest problem. And probably similar for you, I would imagine, is understanding fully, understanding fully what their problems are. Because people are trained to ask for a quote, and they just ring around and ask people for quotes. And they think a body on site giving them a quote is going to be good. And we've had to rewrite the rule book to try and educate people on understanding that paying a professional for their consultation and for working out how much their job might cost to bring them what they want is more important than finding out a random number for having a job done. And it's given me that time through COVID to really nut that out. I never understood how people's thought process would work, but now we've had time to sit down and actually map it out from our previous communications.
Yeah, I must say, like earlier in the piece, and I mean up until the last maybe 2 or 3 years, we did have issues with that, and now we've got our process is so good that when people come to us, we can basically send them straight to a form which gets them to essentially brain dump with all their hopes, dreams, and aspirations, and what they actually want as an outcome, and then we can design a solution or a service based around that, which is often a combination of different products or whatever it might be. What it has meant is that we get, like, our rate of conversion from inquiry is a lot lower. So we get a lot of inquiries, put people through this process, and it disqualifies a lot of them, which is actually, it sounds like a bad thing, but what it means is that people that actually go through the process and come out the other side, we have a much higher conversion on that. So we have a higher conversion on qualified customers, but we have a lower percentage of conversion when it comes to just straight up leads, which is actually a really good thing. And I encourage you guys to consider that. It's not always about more, and this is, I suppose, the beginning of our conversation, we were talking about this. It's not always about more leads. It's about qualifying the leads you're getting and working with them. We don't need a lot. We need a handful. We turn away far more than we work with because we just know our avatar so well.
Yeah, and self-disqualification is so important, isn't it? So we're teeting on this at the moment. You guys are a fully fleshed out going concern, but we're just teeting on this one at the moment. But certainly people who, for the bathroom renovations, they come through, they get to the price box and they're like, oh, okay, I think you guys do a bit more expensive things than we're after. And it's just music to my ears because it's saved me 10 minutes on the phone. Don't have to have a conversation with them. Don't have to go to their house and have a look at it just to find out that they want to try and do a bathroom for 10 grand. And we can't do it.
And that's one of those lessons you learn over the years. And that's why I encourage people to, like, a lot of people will bury the budget conversation, if not leave it out altogether. They'll bury it in the, the final pages of an online form. And I say to people, stick it on the first page of the form before they even have to enter any details. Because if they're not prepared to say they've got a budget which fits, your parameters, then don't waste your time and don't waste their time having this conversation with them. Get it out of the way early, because then looking forward, that if they're going to take the time to complete this form, then they're going to be far more qualified.
Absolutely, that's it. Yeah. So it's front and center. So first thing, price. Let's get it out of the way. And they don't know how much it's going to cost because they're not in the building game.
Right.
But they've got some options to choose from. I don't know if you do something similar.
Yep.
And then if they don't want to come up to that first option, then they're not going to be worth working with. And just for reference, so often people choose the middle option. That's what I've noticed. And by the time they get their proposal, because the information we've extracted is so good, we're often way above their price point. And we look at their proposals and they're spending less than 5 seconds looking at the price, but they're spending 20 minutes every hour looking at the details.
Yeah.
So we're hitting on those points and providing the service they want, and the price becomes less important. But those people who exclude themselves on price straight away, music to my ears.
Exactly right. Okay, so that's one thing you've learned that through COVID. Was there anything else significant?
Well,
what about that paradigm shift of going from, typically in your business, not so much mine, but certainly yours, where you've over the years had a very much a face-to-face transaction with clients, and I suppose being in Victoria as well, now you've been really forced to take that to a framework that is not face-to-face. How's that evolution looked?
Yeah, sorry, we didn't touch on that earlier. We should have hit that. That was the 3D model concept, and then the Zoom meetings and things like that. So it's all foreign. It was foreign to me. Foreign to everyone probably that's not in tech space, I suppose. And yeah, that was a learning cliff. And I wasn't trying to climb it; I fell off it. So I just landed in this space of where everyone is now talking to clients and trying to sell home renovations and remote. You can't get in front of these people. So we had to. That's how our system came about. That's how I should have started the conversation, probably. But yeah, it was due to that fact. We had to get our mindset off of getting in front of people and getting in front of people digitally. And so all the technology just poured in. Zoom came of age. Google Meet or Microsoft Teams or whatever it is you're using.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not doing something like this, a Zoom meeting or whatever it is you're not doing, you should be, because it keeps you in your office and keeps you off site for as long as you can. Because driving around doing dead Ks to meet people, unless you've got a sales team in place, if you're a one-man band or anything, that was a huge part of it.
I remember right at the beginning when this whole pandemic sort of kicked in, and I think it was, I can't remember which paper it was. It might have been the Sydney Morning Herald or something, and they wanted to talk about, what to expect. And I said, well, and at the time I felt guilty about it. After I said it, I kind of regretted it. And I was like, oh, I'm going to get smashed for this. But I remember saying businesses that use this as an opportunity to improve their processes and adopt, tools and technologies that they would not have otherwise brought on board because they've always done something a certain way. And it's always worked, to be fair. Like, the businesses that are going to be receptive to this are the ones that are going to come out the other side. And I look at what you've done and I'd say this is a prime example of that. You've really been able to take that traditional mindset and, traditional business of building and sort of give it a real modern new age spin, which ticks boxes on that having those problems where you can't be in front of a client anymore face to face, so you can't have them sign something in front of you. You've got to have tech in place that can do these sort of things. So I'd say kudos to you and anyone out there that's sort of followed in that same path, because like in the wake of what we've experienced, now you've got a business which has so many more amazing processes that reduce costs, streamline process, are an asset to the company, like all these kind of things that are kind of like, at the time, they seemed like obligations and stressful things that need to be implemented, but now they're like serendipities.
That's it.
So I think it's I think it's been quite an interesting year.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, in 10 years' time, this is where everyone's going to land. It's just,
sure.
we're just, this is where it's going. Like, no one's going to be rocking up, knocking on doors of people's houses. The clients are going to be taking their camera out and showing you a little video of the problem.
Yeah.
And then you're diagnosing it by remote. And then, that's it. It's where we're headed.
Exactly. And so then what's like looking forward then, where do you see the business, and where do you want to take the business, and what's kind of, you don't have to give us the nitty gritty on the end game, but what's the roadmap look like?
Yeah, so we've started this one with the end in mind, and we're thinking we're building the asset. So we're really building this business asset, and we want to build largely on the digital infrastructure. So the whole methodology and the delivery of that proposal process and getting the clients done. So online signatures, all that sort of stuff. We really want to process that out so it becomes a saleable asset in the business, but we're happy to work within the business as well as the business owners. And obviously I like, to be honest, I love getting on site. That's where I want to be. And it's not always feasible, but it's been great getting off site for a bit and being able to get into the back end and really spending time in my, working on my business and building it as a business and treating it as a business rather than just, when you're too close to it, you can't see the problems. Mm-hmm. And it was getting away, and COVID gave me that real opportunity. And I feel bad saying it as well, but it gave me that real opportunity to pull back away and get that high level overview of the business, and then create a roadmap, which we didn't have, and start building some, putting some steps in place to get to some kind of future.
And so, does that sort of focus more on expanse builders, or does it include We Hang Doors, or is it a combination?
Yeah, so we've kept all the IP and stuff, all the intellectual property for We Hang Doors. And as we develop out the building business, we were supposed to shut We Hang Doors and fully be expanse builders 1st of December. But due to the global pandemic happening in between the startup, we're about, we're 6 months behind. So the door business is still running just to keep me basically paying the mortgage in the meantime.
Yeah.
While we're servicing other building clients. We've got a mixture of building work and door work at the moment, but we're going to keep the door business, and we're actually going to roll out we're going to change it. There's going to be a huge shift there, and we're going to move to a more online strategy, and we're going to be more of a sales business. But once we've got so we're going to keep that in place, and we're probably going to build that to sell.
Lovely. Love it, mate. Well, this has been a great conversation. Congratulations on the successes and the journey that you've been on, because I really do feel like you've done it right. And as I said in that Facebook post, my money's been on you from the beginning. So I think you're going to do really well.
Yeah, that's great. Well, just remember, the road to success is paved with the bodies of failure. Like, they're everywhere. So, and it's good you've got to fail. You have to. And like you said, you have to struggle. Like you have to, because you don't know everything, and you think you know some things, and you realise very quickly when you talk to professionals at whatever it is you're trying to do, whether it's technology or, like, I'm not going to talk to a plumber and tell them how to, put a gutter up. That's what they do. You just sound like an idiot. But the path to success is definitely paved with failures, but it's good to have those. It's good to have those failures.
Well, and I think that's important. Like, you should never look at the failures as a negative thing, because, well, it depends how you approach it. I've got some friends that, one of my good mates, I remember him telling me, "Can you believe this?" He was talking about another friend. He goes, he sends out this survey to his customers at the end of a job to see if they were happy or if there were things that they didn't like about what he did. Who would want to know that? And I'm like, mate, you are an idiot. Like, but the point being, having those failures enables you, if you're smart, to improve the process so you don't continue to have those failures. And having small failures is a huge win. And it's very rare that you'll have one huge failure. Like, it's normally a sequence of things which lead up to that, So if you can nip the little ones on the bud as you go, it will very often, in most cases, prevent anything catastrophic happening within your business. So I would say to you guys, and it's kind of a cliche term, get out there and fail fast, fail frequently, fail fast. Like, the point being, get things to market. Like you did with that video, get things to market, test it, and so you can improve it. And like, sure, you might get negative feedback. Perfect. Take it, adopt, move on, keep going. Just be willing to adapt and change.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
That's the key.
Yeah, they're not failures. They're just it didn't work, so we'll just change it.
Pete, this has been great. Thank you once again for all your support over the years. And for you guys, if you're not in the Facebook community, get over there. It's free. There's 6,000 odd business owners from all over the world, which just like Pete, who are always sharing their experiences and awesome little insights on things you can do to improve your business. So I encourage you to get over there. You can search the Site Shed. It's a private group on Facebook. Fill in the questions and one of the ladies will let you in there. Pete, this has been great. Thanks so much. Look forward to chatting to you in the future. Anything you want to close on?
That's all good. Thanks for having me. Long time listener, first time caller. It's great to finally be here and chatting to you, face to face.
Mate, it's great to have you as part of the community and now part of the conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, folks, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from this show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.